Okay, so good evening again in the room and online. Nice to see everybody. So, as far as I understand, and my wisdom is limited, we're starting a series of Wednesdays which are, I think, entitled something like Inspiring Dharma or Inspiring Teachings from the Buddhist Tradition. And this all leads up to Dharma Day, which is taking place sometime in July. Somebody might even have the exact date. 23rd of July. So there can be a series of talks from individuals on what inspires them in the Dharma. I get to go first, which means I can choose anything from the whole of the Dharma. Although, to be honest, it wasn't a very difficult choice. So this evening, I'm going to talk very little. I'm going to talk very little about the Anapanasati Sutta. In fact, I've never read the Anapanasati Sutta. So I can't talk about the sutta, but I can talk about the meditation practice. And, it's kind of said that, if you want to practice the Dharma, you probably spend about 7% reading it, another 13% understanding the words that you've read, and probably 80% of the time practicing it. So the Anapanasati meditation practice is when I kind of started really learning, exploring, adapting for myself about 4.5 years ago. And I made a commitment to practice it for 5 years initially, and just see how that goes. 5 years seems a decent period of time to practice something, to be realistic. And in that time, I probably read fully half a book on the practice. And I've read that book probably 3 or 4 times. And I've rewritten that book into my own words, my own thinking. And I've been through that practice and reworded it and rethought it several times since. So that's what I mean by kind of practice. You learn something, you start practicing it, you then start to realize how it works for you, which might be a little bit different till you find it in the book. And then you find that sometimes the whole thing breaks down and it re-emerges in a slightly different form. And that's part of the deepening process of any practice. So my intention tonight is to basically lead you through part of the Anapanasati meditation practice. It's in 4 chunks, and we're going to focus on mainly the first 2 chunks. So we're going to go through the practice in the first 2 chunks in a kind of fairly led way. Then we'll have a bit of discussion about it, because you'll recognize a lot of it is kind of stretches out from the mindfulness of breathing practice you're presumably fairly familiar with. Anyway, that's the basis of the practice. And from that, the Anapanasati can stretches out further from that. In a way, it stretches out all the way to liberation, awakening, enlightenment. So it is in itself, it's a complete practice. In a way, you don't need anything else. But I'll talk about that later. Then we'll have a discussion about it. Then I might tell you a bit more about the Anapanasati meditation itself and a bit more of the structure. Not in great depth. And then we'll have a little leg stretch, and then we'll have another sit. But we'll kind of take it from a slightly different angle. The way we can do the same meditation twice, but the emphasis on the practice will be different. And I'll say a bit more about that just before we do it. And then the interval will not be an interval, it'll be an endival, because it will come at the end. So rather than doing a meditation, a chat, and then go and get busy in the coffee room, we'll stay and we'll continue keeping the meditative atmosphere going forward. And then we'll have the whatever thing you want to call it at the end. So tea and coffee. You can keep sitting on for as long as you like. That's all good. First, the kind of you'll recognize the beginning of the Anapanasati because it starts with the breath. Anapanasati is the mindfulness of breathing. Yeah. But it's slightly different to how we do it in Triratna. So you recognize the start. It's basically starting with the breath, counting the breath, developing mindfulness, or bringing mindfulness to the fore. Use textual words. From that, it starts exploring the breath, the body, feelings, etc. But the first bit is going to be really familiar. And with any meditation practice, especially something like the Anapanasati, it's got lots of little steps and stages. And you might find as you go through, one of the steps doesn't quite resonate or doesn't kind of work. So we'll get to a step where we look at energy flowing in the body and kind of joy and pleasant feelings arising, called pretty. And that might not be working for you tonight. It might not be happening at all, in which case you just stay with whatever's happening. But the following step, which is actually contentment, just relaxing, sitting at ease, most people can get a bit of that flavor, even if the pretty's not coming. So in a way, if you find something doesn't quite seem to have an effect, don't worry, just stay with where you're at. But do try and kind of move on to the next step. They are kind of sequential, but they're not necessarily always working in the same order. Again, that's kind of when you learn a practice, you learn all the steps. But then when you actually learn to practice it in the real world, it doesn't always work that way. And the steps just become guide markers and pointers as to where you might want to move next, or where you might need to go backwards a bit before you go forward. Yeah. So once you own a meditation practice, you make it your own, you start to use those steps as kind of guide markers rather than strict things you must do. Yeah. I think that's enough. So you want to get into your meditation postures, whatever they may be. Ooh. Oh, that would go on for an hour at least. But just getting yourself comfortable in whatever posture that might be for you. And that focus on the gently curved spine, which is naturally aligned. Shoulders down and back, chest and heart open. Hands resting in the laps. You can speak in that most effortless, easeful postures you possibly can find. With all meditation, just being aware of what you're bringing into the practice. Any busyness from the day, physical or mental tension. In a way, there's no need to do anything about what arises, just accept it, acknowledge it, try and let it go, let it have its own world. Sensing into the body. And into the breath. Perhaps just spending the first couple of minutes just in the usual way with the mindfulness of breathing, just counting the breath, developing that sense of presence, mindfulness. And with that sense of mindfulness established, allowing the counting to fade away, just resting our attention on the breath. And bringing to that attention a faculty of investigation, a real curiosity about the breath. Noticing the length of the in-breath compared to the length of the out-breath. Noticing how much the abdomen swells and contracts with each breath. There's a movement of skin against cloth. Temperature of the air coming in and the temperature of the air going out on the upper lip. Noticing perhaps as the meditation deepens how the breath changes, becomes more shallow and subtle. Just bringing that sense of real curiosity, any or all the aspects of the breathing. Deepening that mindfulness of the breath. With our mindfulness established in the breathing, we expand that out to include the body. In a sense, we bring the mindfulness of the breathing into the periphery of our experience, bring the experience of the body to the forefront of our experience. The breathing remains our anchor to our practice. We'll bring our attention now more towards the body. You might like to notice which parts of the body have more energy than others. Just sense and feel into those areas. It might be useful to scan the body from head to toe, checking in with all the parts of the body. As you notice all the parts of the body just relaxing, easing the body into that restful, relaxed state. Letting go of any tensions or aches or pains. As the body relaxes, you might even feel that energy is released. Again, bringing that back into your investigation, curiosity into the body. Letting go of any expectations of how the body should be. Just being totally relaxed and at ease with how the body is now. And you might notice as the body relaxes, what the effect on the breathing is. As you scan your attention through the body, just see if there are any areas of energy arising, areas where you can get that kind of sensation of vibration, tingling feelings. See if you can bring those areas to the forefront of your attention. And lean into the energy. Lean into the sensation of the energy moving in the body. As you stay with that energy, just noticing any pleasant sensations that arise as a result. Rising of pretty, of joyful energy in the body. Might be quite weak, that's absolutely fine. There might be nothing there at all. But just stay relaxed in the body. That's also fine. We're not expecting anything to happen, we're just being curious to what does arise. If joy and energy arises, just rest our awareness there. How does that energy, that pretty, feel within the body? And if you ever a bit distracted, you've always got the breath. The breath is always held in the periphery. Whatever we're doing, the breath is always there. It's always an anchor for our experience. So if you've had energy, pretty, sense of joy arising, that pleasant experience, just relax any effort you've been making around that. We're just allowing it to subside. I do that by taking a slightly longer out breath, releasing any energy that's been moving. Sense after that energy, what remains is contentment. that feeling of deep, contented easement in the presence of now. And if the joyful energy has not been strong, just sit in the body. In the contentedness of knowing you're practicing the meditation the Buddha was using when he became enlightened. At ease in the knowledge that this practice has been used down the generations to help people escape from suffering, achieve liberation. A deep state of relaxed contentedness. And from this state of relaxed contentedness, and turn our attention to any mental activity which is taking place in the mind. Noticing any thoughts, trains of thinking. In a way, stepping back from the usual thinking mind and looking at it from that contented mind. Almost like a parent watching a child in front of them. Knowing there's nothing they can do to harm themselves. Just need to keep an eye on what they're doing. In the same way, we don't get engaged in the thoughts, the mental activity. We just step back and see if we can watch it. And if we do get caught in thoughts, just notice the feeling tone attached to the thought. You can stop just at the feeling tone and bring it back to that feeling tone of contentedness, relaxed easement. Just watching mental activity. and allowing it to cease. And if we get caught up in thinking, the breath is always there. If we're able to notice the ceasing of mental activity, just see if we can rest in that tranquility of the quiet mind. That open, spacious mind that appears when we're not contracted around thought. That mind that appears boundless, vast and open. If we can be aware of that vast, open, boundless mind. And for the last few minutes of the practice, just allow that to unfold in whatever way it seemed appropriate. Remembering that the breath is always there. If you need to use that as the anchor for your experience. So that might have been a bit of a stretch. So we'll go into groups in a couple of minutes, and yeah, I think it's maybe helpful to think about or discuss our familiarity with the mindfulness of breathing and how what we just did compares or extends or works from that base. How does the process we just went through? But just to help you, I'll go through what we did basically. We basically went through the first two parts of the Anapanasati, which is broken into 4 parts. Now, rather optimistically, the Anapanasati starts with mindfulness established to the fore. Basically, you already start by having a stable mind, undistracted, which seems quite optimistic. My sense is that mindfulness occurs as you go through the practice. If you keep checking in on where's the mindfulness, where's the stability of the mind now, you'll find as the practice goes on, it deepens. And to kind of start with it seems slightly optimistic in my experience. And I do always start with some counting or some sort of mindfulness practice before going into the main practice. What you did, you went from the counting to looking at the breath and really getting curious, investigating the breath, the length of the breath, the feel of the breath on the upper lip, the temperature, the way there's a lot of curiosity and investigation developed in looking at the breath. And that's really to help start deepening the sense of mindfulness, that sense of stability of mind that's undistracted and unwavering. So it's quite a narrow focus on the breath. And then what you're doing, you're broadening that out into the body. So the body became the main focus of your experience, and the breath became peripheral to the experience. The breath stays peripheral to the experience throughout the whole practice. So the breath is always there in the experience of the background, the anchor of your awareness. But you're bringing the body to the fore. And again, you're working with the body and just relaxing the body, any tensions, any movement, any whatever it might be in the body, and just kind of easing into the body so you get into a state of really relaxed, tranquilly letting go into the body, the breath. You're totally at ease, totally present in the now. And from that, energy starts to arise, that energy turning into piti, into that sense, that joyful upwelling of kind of pleasant sensations in the body. That some people get quite strongly, some people get very minimally. Often best developed if you're on a long retreat where you've got time to build up practice over several days. So you might just get a little bit. But anyway, I think that rising of joy in meditation, giving the mind something wholesome to really kind of absorb itself into. So the mind becomes kind of skillfully absorbed in that joy of that pleasant energy arising in the body. That's still quite gross. So what we're doing then, we're kind of letting go of that gross, pleasant energy and just relaxing into the tail of that energy. Almost like when you climbed a mountain and you're tired and you stop. You had all that energy, that positivity, and then you just stop and you can just rest. Yeah, or like just bathing in a pool of warm water. You just rest into it without any effort. And for me, that's the mind is starting to just be at ease with itself, at ease in that kind of spacious, more spacious awareness. from which you can start to look at the mind in more detail and actually just look at what the mind is like, what the thinking mind is doing. The way you're stepping back into this relaxed, at ease, contented mind. And from that perspective, just noticing what's going on. You know, as the parent is looking at the child, there's no need to interfere. Just noticing what our mind is like, how it pulls us in different directions. And just noticing the feelings that arise with that mind, of where it goes and how it goes. And allowing that mind to calm down on its own, allowing that thinking, analytical, cognitive mind just to come to a rest. Or just come to the point where, you know, that's fine. Just the child playing. I put it in the playpen, it's got its toys, do what it's like. I don't need to engage with that. In a sense, at that point, we're moving from this, what we kind of maybe call our everyday thinking, cognitive, analytical, practical planning mind, into this kind of, this broader, spacious awareness, for which we can see that little analytical mind, you know, well, that's just a part of me, isn't it? That's not all of me, just a part of me. I've got this bigger, spacious mind. I mean, Suzuki likes to call it big mind, little mind, the big mind, small mind. The small mind is just one of our faculties. But when it's at rest, I've got this bigger, spacious mind, which is more kind of, it's like a knowing mind. It knows what's going on without any analytical requirement. Anyway, that's as far as we go. And it goes a bit further. I think that was enough.